I'm very excited to have the greatest panel of all time. So let me make sure I have all the right intro questions. So each of you, are you ready? You're going to give me your name, your current or previous company, and the role you hold, your favorite Slack emoji, and why. And then finally, what brought you to NYC? And I'm happy to pass this around if you need it as well. So are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, kick this off, EJ.
Yeah. Cool. My name is EJ White. I'm the head of growth, head of marketing at beehiiv. We're a newsletter-focused email marketing platform. My favorite emoji is one that would be very hard to explain because it's a custom emoji and it's like bizarre. That we use internally. It's like a yellow emoji head, but he's like screaming, like he's excited, but like also like kind of dangerous. Come up to me afterwards, I'll show you. The easy answer, I just respond to anything that's good or like halfway good or that I just want to react to with a flame. That's like my most used one. Like the fire, like that's fire. And so if it's like good news, fire. If it's like, just want to confirm that I've seen it, fire. So yeah, what brought me to New York? Love. I met my girlfriend. I was living in Baltimore and doing the 3-hour commute every week and a half, every 2 weeks, and then decided that New York would be a great place for the next phase of my professional life as well as my love life. And that was about a year ago in July, and then loving it over in Bushwick.
Nice.
Awesome.
Right,
So I'm Avital Knoller, but I go by Avi. Where do I work? Well, I used to work at Wiz, but I just left. But I will tell you the tea today. I am fun employed for a month, and then I already have my next gig rolled as a head of ecosystem in another cybersecurity, because that's my shtick. My favorite Slack emoji is the thinking emoji, because I feel like it's a multi-purpose tool. You can use it for, be right back, I'm thinking about something, or yeah, I see you. But then my second one, we talked about it before, is the fire emoji, because when community works, it's fire. And why am I in New York? My partner used to have a startup. It made sense for us to be in New York, but we stayed because, and we also talked about that before, I'm a mix of many nationalities. So I never really belonged anywhere in a way, and I feel like everyone comes to New York, that comes to New York is from everywhere, so no one belongs, and therefore everyone belongs, and that's why we stayed.
Hi everybody, my name is Peter Kang. I'm the social and community lead at Clay. What brought me, I'll go out of order, I guess. What brought me to New York? I went to school here, NYU actually, and I grew up like in Jersey, an East Coast kid, but I was in LA. What brought me back, a little bit of love. My girlfriend's like working for Mount Sinai, so I was like, yeah, I'll come back. And then a little bit of the multicultural thing, I resonate with that a lot. I love it in New York for that. Favorite Slack emoji? The pray emoji. And
Yes.
I was like reflecting on why do I like that, and it's because I like telling people to do stuff for me, but also like it's very uncomfortable. But then I say like please and thank you. And I use the pray emoji a lot. Yeah. And was that it? What do I name?
I think that's
role?
You got it.
Clay, yeah.
I think you got it. Although I really thought it was going to be the frog with the arms, because that's the one I get from you all the time.
Yes, that's the Clay has like 3 custom emojis pinned, and it's annoying to click for the thumbs up, so I just give you that. Yeah.
Good choice on 3 pinned custom emojis. So, all right. So I love to, whenever I make my questions for any of these panels, I actually create first questions that I have individually for each of them. We'll get to like the general questions, but these are like the grill questions, the ones that only this person can answer. And so I'm very excited to grill Avi first, because she's got the hot tea here. So at Wiz,
Yeah.
I am positive that because you are the largest cybersecurity company in the world, there's a certain level of data privacy that makes sharing best practices a little difficult. So how does one actually build a community when you're working with people that might be controlling codes to certain things that I've never heard of in the United States government?
So, surprisingly, very easy. And I'll tell you why. The reason is that CISOs and security engineers are very lonely. The tools they're using are difficult, and they want peers to ask them questions. And you know what? It's their job, security, so they know what they can and cannot share. I don't need to teach them, so that's easy. And so the only thing you need to do is create the space, meet them where they are, and make it very clear what channel is for what purpose. And they will share. They want to share. They want to know what other people are doing because, again, the tools are difficult. Wiz is a fucking difficult product to use. And onboarding is not necessarily what's going to help them understand it. And so when they get the peers, they get the answers. So it wasn't that difficult in that sense. And actually, the funny thing is that the favorite channel that we had in Slack was our meme channel. So it just shows how much they want friendship, they want camaraderie, they want other people that understand them. So it wasn't that hard. It was like, I'll say it was hard. I did a lot of really hard work. Yeah, very difficult, but not.
Sometimes the community will build itself.
Literally.
Okay, good.
Our
And
community leaders were like the people that answer the questions all the time. So yeah, literally, it
And
built itself.
just to like highlight what you're saying basically because CISOs in the businesses, they're like the only person thinking about this. They're like, who do I even talk to about my
Exactly.
struggles? So,
Exactly.
you know, that's like interesting thought just for anyone else in the room. If you're thinking about building communities, like we find like chief of staff communities are big. That's usually a one-person role at most companies. Communities. There's not a lot of community managers at a business. So another good example. So CISOs as well, it seems like a good one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm gonna go far. All right, ready? All right, let's hit you,
Yeah.
Peter. All right, Clay's been doing pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Clay events. By the way, this is clay.com. I know some people actually have been saying clay.earth recently.
Don't do it.
I know, so this is just to be very clear. But Clay is killing it. Frankly, you guys are all over the space. I'm seeing you at the top of every list. And I think the key question there is, when does an investment in community actually stop? Like, when do you stop getting the return on investment? Because clearly your community is growing like crazy. When do you feel like you want to stop putting more into it because it's just being fine?
Never. I don't know. That's a great question because community is, I think a lot of organizations think about community as this like side thing. I think Clay, we got lucky where the founders from like inception really baked it into how we think about every single thing. But I think the real answer is probably not until like IPO and like we all leave and like we start thinking about like, you know, bottom line and stuff because we're not thinking about community from the perspective of like tangible, measurable ROI and everything. I think there's a level of trust that starts with the founders and like also like we hire for this that is intuitive to everyone that's working on it. That a lot of like just because something can't be measured doesn't mean it's not valuable, right? And that's kind of like so true in community even more than other channels. But we see. We have a level of trust and we see a lot of like anecdotal validations that we like constantly keep tabs on, whether that's an inbound that came in for like a named logo that was based on like somebody that like we had no like bearings on. It's the fact that like still like 80-90% of our inbound or like growth is through word of mouth, UGC, all those things. UGC, that like I get a lot of credit for being the social guy, but like so much of us being all around is community investment and people just posting about us organically. I think to give you like an actual answer, it would be once we aren't growing as we are and we want to take the risk of like A/B testing, like removing investment there and seeing like the feedback loop of like when does it actually start hurting like deal velocity and like brand NPS scores or something like that. But that's so far removed from even how we think about the business today that it feels like a forever later eventuality.
And I think the thing, just to even highlight what you're saying, because I know the Clay community in depth, your team has actually built, like you said, everyone has like a role in it, right? Like Lola on your team is building creators and like actually the cohorts of like folks that are going to go out and do like essentially the work that you want them to do. It is sell themselves and sell the product. And then you've got George who's running, customer support at scale inside of the community with his team. And so I feel like what Clay is kind of innovated on is that unlike a lot of organizations where community sits under a single department, they decided it's actually going to sit under all departments and we're going to invest everyone's time into it, including, right, like social and building out that brand. So I think you guys, I was at a talk with Varun yesterday. Varun's their COO, mentions community at least like 3 or 4 times in every talk. It's impressive what Clay has been able to do and why y'all are going to crush Clay.earth in terms of SEO, right?
With some help from Tightknit.
If you search Clay community, you're going to show up on a Tightknit site on Google. That one is a very cool thing to see. All right. Avi, I'm going to actually hand over the mic because we're mic down, as you can see. So we're gonna toss it left and right.
Sure,
All right,
caring.
EJ, we're gonna hit you. Normally, I like answering this question. But EJ, I think you'll have a very unique take. What is the difference between an audience and a community, especially when considering the idea of newsletters versus a community?
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it. The way that I think about the difference between audience and community is a little closer.
Yeah.
Is this better? Over there. Brett, can you hear me in the back? No. A little closer. Oh,
there we
actually,
go.
way closer. Everybody else has seemed like they were so much louder when they.
We're puffing our
they're
chests
they're
out.
projecting more than I am. I need to project a bit more. Difference between community and audience. I think about this in that audience being more of like a one-way kind of broadcast, and it doesn't have to be that 100%. Obviously, on social media, creators create and they receive feedback from their audience through likes and through comments and stuff. But that interaction feels a little bit more removed and less intimate than a community where there's a true two-way exchange. Even with social, when the audience is giving feedback through their likes and through their comments, it's not so much in that one-to-one communicative style. And so the way that I would think about that difference would be the relationship that you're building. And audience and community both are 100% about relationship, but there's just different flavors of those relationships. And so when you're building that one-to-one connection and you're building, it doesn't have to be one-to-one, but it's, when you're building this group, tight-knit community of people, you want a very different dynamic and a different paradigm for people to interact. And that's a great, maybe the best media for that is Slack. When we're talking about a broadcast audience, you have things like social media, but even then, that paradigm isn't even perfect because you have the algorithms determining who's going to see which content. You make a post, somebody might not see it for weeks because their feed is full of everything else. And so when we talk about newsletters, newsletters are great for that broadcast audience because you get placed in that very kind of intimate digital space in the inbox. There's no algorithm standing between you and your audience. And in that way, it sort of blurs the lines a little bit between community. You can have that one-to-one relationship with somebody who is, a subscriber, but I think there certainly is nuance. But some people will call their audience a community. If you have a newsletter, they'll be like, this is the newsletter community, that I've created. But you see that especially blurred when you start having like people commenting and interacting with each other within something like a comment section, or even further if you have like a forum or anything attached to your site.
Yeah, and I think what I'm watching with like the way beehiiv has grown, right? You started with you are a newsletter platform, but you've grown into more of a creators platform. And regardless of what medium, you're trying to choose the best medium. And the irony is like, all these other community platforms, they sell as like, oh, you check your email and then you join the community and then you respond and then you wait 4 hours later. And I think what was so unique is that even though, yes, email from a audience perspective, right, for what you're building there, you realize that you wanted that more immediacy, that reaction, by putting the community into Slack and then creating essentially, right, this community of creators and newsletter writers that are not emailing each other and actually are bringing each other closer together, and a lot of physical events too, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we see both sides of this. We see, both with our users, our people who are sending newsletters. Those are the ones that we have in our Slack community. So we actually have a closed Slack community that is only available to our paying customers. And so if you become a paying customer, you can join, and that's how we have proxied for quality in a way, to make sure that like the people who are in the community are the ones who are actively building, who have some skin in the game, and who have something to lose in a way, where it's like the more they put in, the more they get out, and there's some stakes to it, versus what we were worried about with something like a free community through another tool like Discord, or a tool that would be kind of facilitate a free community a little bit easier, would be everybody kind of with a passing interest in newsletters discovering this and kind of drowning out the signal with just noise of, low quality engagement. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the right move ultimately. We made the move that we did, and we're very happy with that. So maybe I'm sure there's plenty of people who have built communities the other way, but for us, we really like that space, and it's a huge selling point for us. It's the way that I close all of our virtual events. I do 3 a week, and at the end of it, we always plug the community. If this was helpful, if this webinar was helpful, you can get help on demand within our community. There's people engaging. I get dozens, if not hundreds, of messages a day across all of the different channels.
Well, you're forcing my hand actually on the next question that I'm going to ask all of you, because you all have very different types of communities. And by the way, I'm going to ask this one question, and then we're going to move it to the audience. So start thinking. All right, so here's the fun one. You all have different types of communities. Yours is a semi-open community, right? As soon as you're a beehiiv customer, you can join it. Yeah. Avi, you worked on a community where it was like you had to be a certain tier, essentially, of the Wiz product. And then, Peter, you've got a very open community, and all of your communities are successful, which I think is so interesting to see. They all fit your business and the mentality of your business pretty well. So I'm going to actually start with you, since you're already leading into it. Okay. We'll double down on that question, and then we'll open it up to the two of you to talk about like what you think, your style of open versus closed versus semi-open. What is that able to provide your business, and how have you used that to, again, grow revenue?
Yeah, so part of it is financial. Working on Slack, it does cost money for every user to be in Slack. And so that was a little bit of a limiting factor when we're B2B nominally, but when you talk about who our customers are, it's a lot of people who are building side hustles. And so it's a business of one. So if essentially you're reaching people on an individual basis, so the motion is much more B2C. And so within that kind of scale, we're about to hit, I think, 1 million people in our marketing database any time now. Like, that's just a ton of people to potentially bring into a Slack community. The cost would be astronomical. And so we really wanted the tools to be able to curate the community to be kind of close at hand. We didn't want something that was going to be outside of a normal workflow, like a circle or something like that. Everyone in our company is in Slack. And so we made it very easy to just like jump. You can just, with a couple of clicks, be in the community and responding to people's questions, comments, any help that they need. And you can just jump right back to work. And so in a way, that's kind of how we incorporate our team with the community itself. But it was kind of born out of that kind of financial decision. And then on top of that, just the structure and dynamic nature of like being able to share links, being able to share files, being able to share images and videos, just like so cleanly and in such an organized way was very appealing to us, just to keep things organized. Our biggest fear was that this would devolve into like kind of a free-for-all. And so that's kind of how we made the decision. But I guess at the end of the day, it was all mostly financial, of like wanting to do it in Slack. We needed to have some sort of stakes. We needed to be making some revenue in order to justify that.
Amazing answer. And also, I might know a little bit too much, but we should check, because I don't know if it goes up per member the way that you're built.
Oh, no, it does not now.
It does not now. So yeah, I'll just make one fun call out for Slack. You can start free, and we'll end with Peter, who lives in that world, but there is an option to have a free Slack community, and many people do it. I'm going to hand you that, but Avi, you're going to just in case you got to respond.
Well, for us, it kind of connects to the question you asked me before. It's a cybersecurity community. We need to create trust. And so for us, it was initially just for our top tier paying customers to kind of build the trust. And then we started opening it up to every customer, but only their like touch point with us. So just a person that could actually even open a support ticket, because the way that Wiz is built, not everyone can open a support ticket. And now we're expanding it to all users, but it was because we wanted to create the trust and we wanted to create the safe space and to show them that they can share. And if we would have started with all of our users, it would have been a huge community, and that could have been the thing that would have made them feel like, oh, it's not intimate. We can't go in here and ask the peer-to-peer questions. So that's kind of why we did it this way. There are talks about now maybe eventually opening it up also for prospects, because we do see the value, and prospects know that we have a community, and so they always ask to join it. But it was kind of like still a thought. Should we, shouldn't we? We don't know yet. I mean, I don't know what they'll do now. Ta ta ta. But yeah, we'll see.
Zach, remind me of the question.
The question
I know
is essentially like the type of community that you have. So, like whether it's a closed community or in your case, like a very open community. Obviously, you have some gates, and you can talk about how your team has built some of those gates. But your community, as we know, is a very open community.
Yeah.
How has that been able to kind of both fit the mentality of your business and even grow revenue for you?
Very great question. And I think it's interesting to observe like how I think our models work for the different companies really well. I'll talk about this probably later, but so Clay, we are like so fully open, other than like having filters in place for like bots and like spammers and stuff like that. You don't have to even be a customer. You can be like people like casually interested and like churn out. And I think that definitely has its trade-offs. Certainly, I think the value density or like the quality of life density at the long tail is going to be lower than having a more curated version like you guys started with. But I think it was the ethos of how we operate and ship things is very like fast and break things, and I would not recommend most companies start with like, all right, everyone get in this digital room together. But I think the reason that it works and it worked and does work, I think one is like, I'm stealing this from my head of marketing, Bruno, who stole it from Reforge, but like I think we have really good product channel fit. Like, is your product a good fit for this channel? And Clay is like, it's like a spreadsheet with primitives, and everyone builds their own permutation of it. So yes, it's a sales tool, but we think about it a lot like, how would people think about Notion? How would people think about like Webflow or Figma or something like that? Which is like very good fit for people sharing collaborative, like I built it like this. Oh, interesting, I built it like this. Why'd you build it like that? And I think that, along with the fact that we have a very strong support team embedded into Slack as like kind of the tentpole that also keeps it standing up, we know that the tool is also hard to start on. It's kind of like if you open up, I don't know, if you've never used Excel before, if you've never used Photoshop before, like it can be a little daunting, that blank canvas. And giving the right incentives and rewards for people helping others, like you can get people started activating really fast. The other aspect also I should say is we're like very product-led growth, like 80% plus. So we want people coming into our free tier, clicking around, sourcing stuff, building stuff. So we do see community serving many functions, but activation is a big part. So I think that's how it fit well with that. Yeah.
Amazing. And now we turn it all to you. So, who wants to be first? Who's got a question? Amazing. You up front.
Awesome. Hey all. My question is, how many people do you need for the community to really start like working by itself? I mean, here you said yours was open. If you had a lot of people join, that's awesome. But Avi, presumably only a small amount of, or not everybody was able to be in the community at first. Like if there's 2 people, it's probably not going to be good.
And I'm going to repeat the question, and then I'll hand it over. So just to boil it down, essentially, how many people do you need in a community for it to really start taking off?
So we started with 300, but I think you can start with less. Community is behavior, right? So if you're teaching this behavior from day one to your customers, then you'll get a really great community. So even if you have, I don't know, like 10 customers and you put them in a room and you teach them that this is where they should ask questions before they go to support, before they go to their customer success, you're actually building a really good initial community. Because on that, as it grows, you know, there's already going to be the conversation. And it's a lot easier to jump into a conversation than to start one. So it's a behavioral thing, and I would start with as little as 10 people. If a company can afford it and will allow it, that's amazing.
I'll go. Really like what you said about behavior. Yeah, I think it's a matter of like how you want to balance velocity with resourcing versus like curation. If you're in a place where you can like actually incubate with 10, but like leadership wants to see, might want to see something bigger sooner, that's like what you got to balance. But if you're in a place where you can start with 10, like you can really curate those people and be like super high value engaged people. Something like 50 to 100 feels right to me. If like initially
Yeah.
people are resourcing with like one community lead, and then the behavior thing, it's like it takes one internal person, community lead to like I call it like keeping the balloon up in the air. As like, hey, look, like I did a thing, and then like here's a gold star, whether it's an emoji or something, and then now you do it, and then slowly you can like take a step back and watch them like keep the balloon up by themselves, and that's when you can tier more, add more. Yeah.
These are really interesting. We started ours when we had, I don't know, maybe 15, like half the customers we have now. We had like 15,000 paying customers, I think, at the time. And so we just basically sent them all invites to join. And from that, we're now north of 30,000, and we have about 4,000 that have joined all time. So about 10% of all of our paying customers have joined. But candidly, I have no idea what that would look like in terms of what the minimum was. They kind of just started joining, and all of a sudden we had like 1,000 or 2,000, and that was kind of where we started things. So certainly you could probably go much lower than that, but I have no insight into like what the lower bounds of that is. I like the idea of 50 to 100. That sounds good. We'll go with that. I also have no formal background in community. I know that's something that might be a little anathema here. So I've been learning a lot about this process as I've gone. A lot from Zach, a lot from my users. So just like understanding what their needs are in terms of like staying engaged. And I think part of that, part of how like some of the training wheels for that process have been that we started with like a pretty hefty size, where I might not have experienced some of the growing pains of having a smaller community and having to kind of keep that going. So that's really fascinating, that comment about kind of having to keep things in the air, because we were at a point where you say something, somebody else is immediately like jumping in, because there's just enough people that somebody will see it somewhere in the world at pretty much any time of day. So sorry, I can't be more helpful there.
No, I think I'm going to throw in my answer, because I think these are all correct answers. I think what I always say is think about servant leadership first. Can you help one person? And then can you help 2 people? And then can you help 3 people? Because even though some of these numbers are big, literally, and I mean this literally, people join one at a time, right? You are thinking one person at a time. Sure, maybe 1,000 people join in a day, but they all joined at different times, and you need to be able to think about how do you build the community for one of those people, and then 2, and then so on. So I wouldn't focus on growth. I would focus on outcomes as the primary goal when you're building a community. That's definitely where I think a lot of teams can get caught up in thinking bigger is better. And I'm actually going to spin it into something I should have done at the very beginning of this, to talk about fabric. So, thank you. Yes, I'm a little bit scatterbrained, as one would know when like hosting an event, and so there's a particular order of things to do. In the beginning, I would have done an intro to fabric. So, Jacqueline, do you mind if I do this? Let's give it to you. You ready? Can I talk about the Founding 50, and then can I have you stand up? That's what I was. Okay. That was what. No, I know it. So the Founding 50, I think, was a great way to start fabric. I think it was create a early community within the community, something that gives people an elevated space to go, this is something I care about, this is something that I belong to, and you will find that there are some incredible advocates. Who here is a fabric member? I think it's actually a pretty low number today, which is great, because usually we have a lot. So we've got about 5. These are some of the most active people in the community space, and we continue to show up for each other. And by building that early group, you can do some amazing things because they will advocate for you till the end. So with that, I do want to hand it over to you. Absolutely, get on up.
Sorry, guys.
We are going to do a midway advertisement for Fabric, my favorite physical community.
Yeah, it's a break. We're on
and
break.
none other than the CEO, Jacqueline, is
Intermission.
going to come up and give you that intro. So please.
So what's really fun about the Founding 50 is that Ruthie was our first member and Zach was our second.
Wow.
So it's really, really sweet. Hi guys, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be as quick as possible, but thank you guys so much for being here. It is so lovely to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. Zach's the best, super excited to be here to support him, and this panel's amazing. So great job, guys. We'll be back to it in a second. But Fabric is a network of social spaces. We are heavily focused on social wellness and social health to bring community building back together in real life. We are a network of spaces, so you're sitting in our very first space, about a year old. We just launched our second in Dumbo.
Whoa.
Yeah, about 2 months ago,
Whoa,
which is crazy. But the premise is that you can walk into Fabric any given day and it will look different based on the communities that are here at that time. So we have a ton of communities, about 150 of them that call Fabric home. If you are building a community, if you're building a business, if you want to be around like-minded people who are building something really creative and really great, Fabric's a wonderful place for you. And then one quick note, if you are, thank you for coming to Zach's event, and because you're all here and we're really grateful. On the way out, if you are interested in learning more about Fabric and potentially getting the opportunity to try Fabric, we're offering a trial week to anyone who's here today so that you can spend time here and get an understanding of what membership might be right for you. So thank you again for letting me do this intermission, and we'll be here all night.
Yeah. There's some QR codes, definitely scan them. And as you can tell, I like to keep things interesting. We'll never know what's coming next. All right, I want another question, then we're gonna come back to my questions. All right, we're gonna go, I saw you raise your hand, blue shirt in the back.
Hey guys, Brandon. I run a community for runners. I have about 30, 50 members. My question is very simple, maybe for each of you, is what was the most difficult aspect about building the community, running the community? How did you overcome that? And I guess the second part is, how do you measure success, and maybe how do you suggest measuring success in the community?
All right, I'm gonna repeat the question. So, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. What is the most difficult part about building a community, and how do you judge when a community is being successful? And maybe we'll start in the middle. How about Avi?
Okay. The most difficult thing, I think, is internal buy-in. And the reason why I'm saying that is because mostly when you are hired, you're a team of one at the beginning. They have no idea where to put you because you can be in marketing, you can be in customer success, you can be in product. Depends on the product or the company. They literally don't know what community is most of the times. They just think it's like cool and they want to have it and they don't know how to measure it or what to do with it. And so you need to really advocate for yourself all the time. So that's, to me, was a lot harder than creating engagement or bringing people into the space. How do you measure success is a combination of two things, like actual measurable data, right? So how many questions do community members respond to? How fast do you respond? Like all these trackable things that you can think of, but you need a combination of real stories because, you know, trust and belonging is not something you can measure, it's a behavior. So you need to be able to show it somehow. So a lot of screenshots, a lot of screenshots, a lot of stories of how product adopted an idea from a customer and now it's on our roadmap, or how a customer showed a lot of happiness in the community and now they were in jeopardize of churning and they didn't. So like a lot of these stories, and then create your, you know, send it out, send it to everyone, send it with the numbers. Numbers to show, yeah, you know, what you need, but then pictures to tell a story because numbers are boring and you need to also show fun stuff. And if you add the pictures, it helps. So a lot of screenshots, always combine both.
Me?
We'll kick it to you.
I think, Avi, you nailed it. I think you just gotta, so it was challenge and the, how do you measure success? Yeah, I think for the challenge, we have a lot of good internal buy-in for like community as a whole from the founder down, which I feel very fortunate for, but I do think there's like, still needs to be a lot of advocacy done, like marketers and us internally, especially for the long tail of like freemium, like lower tier users. From the CEO, CFO seat, it's just gonna be harder to like resource or like feel excited if like they don't see like pipeline movement per se. But when you can come back, you know, you need to be anchored in the quantitative with like engagement numbers. But for us, I think like we do work on vibes a lot, for better or for worse. Something quantitative around that is like UGC generated per month that we didn't put in any investment into. Another thing is like referred inbounds. That is a little bit more quantifiable. But really it's like a human narratives of like, oh, this person got like, I don't know, we sent somebody like a clay branded like baby bib after like they just had a baby and like they like raved about it and it went viral. Like those are the things that actually like Varun is clocking all the time. Varun's our COO or head of ops. So yeah, advocacy, certainly challenging, and human narratives, yeah.
I'm going to give a slightly different answer and kind of take it from the perspective, I don't know what the context of that community that you run is, but like outside of like a situation where like maybe community is part of a larger organization, because I've certainly faced both of those things. You know, we wanted to have a community, but then, you know, when we want to basically hire a community manager, because before it was just like kind of a bunch of people managing it part-time, then it's like, well, what is the ROI? Can we afford a community manager? Is there 40 hours a week? That's certainly, I think, by far within a company, been our biggest challenge. But if you're kind of speaking more from the perspective of like operating a community that's like an entity unto itself, my experience has been both being part of communities and witnessing what goes on in our community is really keeping like substantive, valuable conversations going, because at the end of the day, there's like a gamut of people asking questions that are like way too hard for like just regular people to answer because it's very specific to their situation. And then on the other side, you have people asking questions that are like way too basic and just like nobody wants to respond because it's just like such a basic thing that's kind of a waste of time. And somewhere in between is kind of the sweet spot of like driving valuable engagement, of like widely applicable advice that like other people can buy into. Because at the end of the day, if you're too self-centered about what you're sharing in the community, like people don't necessarily want to engage. They want to engage because they're going to also benefit from the engagement, unless you have like those angels that just want to be in the community and just help people altruistically, which you need also. But it basically comes down to like that balance of being able to keep those conversations going and foment more of those kind of additive situations. We use our community kind of as initially it was kind of thought about as like almost like a support overflow, as much as it kind of, is kind of cuts counter to I think what most communities should be. We're like, our support team has a ton to deal with. What if we created this space where people could just go and talk and kind of self-serve answers and crowdsource answers? And it's obviously evolved to be way more than that now, but that's, we have not so much anymore because we actually have just brought on someone, I was telling you earlier, we brought on someone from our team to now manage the community as their main focus. But before, there was this kind of dichotomy of people who would be like, there'd be people answering questions and I'd see them getting answered, and then this other group of people who would ask questions and they never get it answered. And I was getting both, I was seeing the success, but also getting feedback of like, there needs to be more engagement. I never get any answers, any responses to my answers, and that's like a super hard thing to diagnose, at least in my very kind of neophyte experience to communities. I was like, how can you possibly think that nobody's answering your questions? I see all of these questions have answers to them, but then I would look at their specific, I'd search them, and like, yes, them specifically had like never had any questions answered. I'm like, how can I even detect this? Like, I don't know how to detect this and make sure this doesn't happen, but maybe you guys can give me some advice. You guys have seems like a ton of experience in that way.
Literally AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now we have the Tightknit AI TM that responds to every single person, but our community with Tightknit is still a little bit also nascent, so we got to beef up that backlog to get better answers.
Yes, we do.
But maybe it's getting better now because I actually haven't heard people respond to the AI being like, no, that doesn't help me. I love it when people respond and be like, I do that because I get mad at the AI.
We all get mad at the AI. But yeah, I think just to even like continue, I think what they're all getting down to is the metrics change, which is actually going to lead into my favorite question that I got to write for this. But it really does depend on what the goal is of the community. And they can have multiple goals, but you also have to prioritize those goals and focus on the top one as the primary goal of the community. And then I do want to just mention, it is so important regardless of the goal, just to make sure people feel seen. I cannot over tell you, just like make sure somebody, when they come in, I was talking to a women's community that just collapsed because it was women going through really difficult problems. They chose a platform that most people did not check regularly, and these very, very like open, hard problems are being posted, and people were going days without getting responses. Community collapsed immediately. So I won't say what platform because I can't shame others, but you know exactly which platform it was. So anyway, we are going to move to my favorite question. And you all have to answer this in one word. Otherwise, this puppy drops into the well. So,
Jesus,
are
that's
you ready
dark.
for this? You got to save the puppy for me.
Why, Zach?
I know, this is a tough question. So you have one choice. You have to choose which department you put your community in. It can only be in either support, marketing, sales, or product. You get one word.
I mean, I'm head of marketing, so marketing, of course. It's more than one
That
answer.
was.
That is
I'm not going
that's
to kill
one
the
answer.
puppy.
Marketing.
But yes, thank you. Puppy is going to live. Don't worry.
Well,
Puppy.
I am really sorry, puppy. I don't have an answer for that. Well, I will say, no, I will say that specifically at Wiz, I think product, but it's not, maybe, can we add a community department?
Puppy's already gone.
Wow.
Move on.
Oh man.
Are you gonna kill him twice?
I get.
There's 3 puppies.
If
EJ's taking his home.
yeah, if you're holding a gun to my head, for most companies, I guess like marketing. I guess, but I have so many like other thoughts.
The
there.
puppy can go home. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let me.
You don't get the mic back.
Oh, that's fair. The reason I ask that is community is spread so far across so many different departments. No one ever agrees, and you have to drop puppies into a well in order to actually choose which department, because everybody is asking for it and no one wants to fully own it, right? Because there's so many handshake deals that need to be made, which is why, again, I think the Clay team is doing a great job with that. You guys started from the beginning, but a lot of teams have very structured community platforms. And it makes it really difficult because it ends up being just one team responsible, but they're responsible for the whole company. They're responsible for marketing. They're responsible for product. They're responsible for support. And so, anyway, I'm sorry for dropping my fake puppy into the well, but I really wanted to find out where each of you would put it. I know. It wasn't a cute puppy. If it helps, I don't know. Oh, I know. That's just
That doesn't
mean. I know.
help.
Now I've lost the crowd. All right. We're going to ask just a few more questions, but I'm actually most excited again about whatever questions you all have. So start coming up with them. You know what? Sure. If you got it, let's jump into it. We'll jump back to my questions.
Okay.
We'll go right there.
I have a quick one. Some of you talked about community leads. So I'm just curious about the process for that. In my experience, it's been organic, but you talk about it as a very purposefully thing. So I just wanted to know, if you choose one, how do you manage that?
You mean community leaders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you choose a community lead, right? Is that coming down to the question? Okay.
We put out an application. We wanted to see people again, because it was a paid community, we didn't want just somebody on a power trip who just wanted to be part of it to just automatically become the leader. So we went through a very, I'd say slightly formal, but not full interview process, but just we met with them on Meet and we had them answer some questions to know that they actually knew what they were talking about the platform, that they were just not going to ignore this. And I think out of the 3 people we chose, one of them has stayed really, really consistent and has been very, very helpful. When you start going outside, especially when you're doing this as part of a company, when you go outside of formal employees, it can get a little bit funny. There's definitely some situations where this person's supposed to be kind of this pseudo-organic mouthpiece for us in the community, but then would recommend something competing, and we'd be like, bro, you can't do that. You can't push them over to this other product or mention this other thing. We just don't want you to, And they were always really good about it. But there's always kind of those growing pains. But ultimately, it's been really, really good, and our experience has been great using those community leaders. And I'd say less formal than community leaders. It's really cool to see the less formal but just active users. There was a case the other day where somebody posted asking about when is beehiiv going to get this specific functionality, and some guy jumped in and was like, what are you talking about? This has been available forever and we're doing all of this and we're just using it actively. You're crazy. Why did you not know this existed? Not quite that aggressive, but it was very aggressive. And it's just if you're work at a company and you just want to talk to customers like that, but you can't. It's nice to have a community where your users will do that for you. And the guy was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was existing. I'm going to go play with it right now. And I was like, great. This guy was speaking for me the way that we all want to talk to them, but we have to be kind of veiled in the corporate speak. So.
Well, we didn't do that that at all. I chose the leaders. But what I did is 2 things. One, I chose the ones that I saw that wanted to be in the community, the people that were asking a lot of questions and just responding naturally. But then I did the unorthodox thing and I brought in the troublemakers. I was like, okay, this person clearly wants to be involved and they have a lot of opinions. And instead of letting him or her or them just say whatever the fuck they want, I'm going to bring them into this community of leaders. I'm going to bring them into our private chat group and our private meetings. And they actually became the most involved leaders we had. They just wanted to be seen. And so I think it's a combination of those who are just naturally good at this and definitely bring in the troublemakers. Everyone wanted to kill me when I said that I'm going to bring them on board to be leaders. And I was like, no, it's going to change the narrative of this whole person. And it did.
That's genius. And
Thank
like
you.
kudos to you for pulling that off.
So good, the puppy is alive.
Thank you.
Incredible, we are 3 for 3 on puppies.
Oh
All right,
my
back
God,
to you, Peter.
Thank you.
So yeah, so just to distinguish, like community lead in my head, I think of like the person internal to the company that's like running with community.
Yeah.
You're saying like
Community leader.
people organically in the community. So I think if your question is around like sourcing and selecting, I would select for like, is that the question or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you have someone actively monitoring, like you'll get an anecdotal sense of like the champions that are like coming up and up and up. With like AI and analytics, you can probably filter for like signals of like at least on volume. But I think so like engagement, but then also like product expertise and obsession. Like a lot of people kind of like you can tell are obsessed. But then the other thing that you do need to bring in like a bit of like a formal check for is like, I don't know what else to call it than like business sense. Where you do need to put a check in that. Community is great because there's so much surface area for stickiness, but there's also a lot of surface area for like people running rogue with like a lot of weird shit. Like that was a good example that you gave. So yeah, I think people, if you have a good like incentive structure in place that guides people towards the right behaviors, people will self-select and show themselves, and that can be your first sourcing pool. I have seen people successfully like source externally. I've just found it pretty challenging to find, especially the product obsession portion of that. Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question. What are the different types of leadership roles that you can give people in a community?
Good question. The biggest thing that comes to mind for me off the bat is just like, there's product kind of support, but like a lot of product related stuff that doesn't really fit into like debugging stuff or getting started, but just like, how do I think about this? And then there's also a lot of help around like GTM in general. How do you think about this space in general? So I think giving people like a go-to like helper guide is probably the thing that's most intuitive to all of us. I think the other thing for us is, maybe this is specific to Clay because we have so many agencies trying to sell their own stuff, but like, moderation and like giving like the right slap on the wrist in the right ways when it's appropriate, flagging things to me or someone internally when it's appropriate. Those are the only two that mainly come to mind. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, but yeah, curious what you guys think.
I was just thinking because you also have like an ambassadors team too, right? So
Yeah, so we have you're talking about like the Clay Club leads?
I mean, you got Clay Club, you got Clay Experts, you guys are
You're
doing
talking
a lot
like,
of
big,
programming,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So we have our general Clay community that's just like anyone can join in Slack. We have the creators program, which is like broad co-marketing motion. So if you think about like, there's like Notion people that like build curriculums for teaching. There's Notion people for personal finance. Like similarly, we have that tranche of like Clay makers that build tables for different use cases that we want to elevate their content and like have them make content for us. We have a different tranche which is more co-selling. They're agencies doing outbound motions, and then we have like the big enterprise agencies that are like co-selling like Intercom and Verkada with us. Those people, I mean, by the time you get up there, it's all about like business numbers and stuff, so that's easy to select for. The creators, I think we just like monitor social listening. But I do think there's a bit of a qualitative aspect in there where we're getting actually pretty good at using AI to analyze their product expertise by running their like tables through our like analysis. But we do have like written portions that we also pass through AI for some sentiment analysis around like, do they give a shit about the community? Do they kind of get the brand, the values that we're going for? Are their tables just like LinkedIn like drivel listicles versus like, oh wow, this is actually an interesting take that we didn't like hear before. So yeah, originality and do they get our kind of brand voice and values is what we select for there.
Amazing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to kind of end it with the closing questions, and then the rest of it is all your time, which is going to be very fun because I like the questions we're getting so far. So this last question is so for me, platforms, I think is definitely a big conversation with a lot of community managers. It always comes up. And don't worry, I'm totally a shill at this point for Slack communities. You can understand why. So I don't need you to all answer Slack, although you should. But what should people be thinking about, really? Like, what should people be thinking about when they're building communities, and how should they be choosing the platforms to fit those communities?
The way I do it is I try to understand where the users are. Because again, we're talking about human behavior, right? And if it's already something they're using and I can tap into it, it's always easier. And that's kind of why we chose Slack. It's not easy to build a community on Slack. That's why you need AI and Tightknit. There you go.
Okay, that one I didn't plan, I swear.
But if you have the right tools, it's easier to bring people in there. And just really ask yourself, where are your people at? And I think that's how you should choose.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I mean, that's largely how we chose Slack. I will say in contention within that was also Discord, because as a platform that services creators and publishers that skews a bit younger, you know, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, obviously there's a lot of millennials, but Discord was obviously very popular, and I've like part of like 10 Discord channels, and I hate going on Discord every single time I try. I just don't understand how anyone uses it. But that's just because I'm old and I've never been a gamer and never been a YouTube watcher. I'm like the only millennial man that isn't obsessed with YouTube, I think. But yeah, we just didn't want to use Discord. So we made that choice of we're going to make this super easy for our community because that's where we find them, but also for us internally. We wanted it to be something that wouldn't sit on an island. We used another platform, Circle, for some of our initial, very early rudimentary kind of like pre-community stuff. And to be completely honest and transparent, we neglected a lot of like the building there because just nobody on our team was naturally in that platform often. And so it had to be built into the workflow to go there and like do the stuff. Whereas with Slack, we're always in Slack. It's again at arm's reach, just one button. You're in the community. Now you can start engaging. So for us, it was just a huge, huge unlock there.
Yeah, I'll echo the meet them where they are thing. If I'm guessing a lot of people are in B2B SaaS here. Getting like some VP of sales to download Discord and like sign up is like, it's just not gonna happen. I think like Slack is the best for that, and for like we're on Slack. I have so many like qualms with Slack because it's not built for communities. It's built for like internal orgs, and like I vent to Zach about this every time we talk.
All of us.
Like I thought that Slack and Discord were like feature parity, but it really is not, especially when it comes to like I will talk your ear about this if you come find me. But yeah, the thing I'll add is like I don't think you should let this be the blocker for you like launching or testing, especially if you're starting with like an incubation group of like 10 to 100 or 200, whatever. Migration sucks, and you should do it like before you like start to really scale out things. But if you're incubating and you actually get to a good place with 50 people, like that's like probably where I would like look to migrate. But yeah, I wouldn't overspin your wheels on it. Yeah.
Can I ask a question to the audience?
Please.
Who here has a community on Slack? Raise your hand.
Raise your hand
Higher than that.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's on Discord? Who's on Circle? Oh, that's why I'm getting those looks.
Although
That's why I was
Ruthie's a
laughing
big
when you
Slack
said
community
Circle.
lover. Yeah.
Sorry.
She
Ruthie.
loves Slack.
Who's on Facebook? Like Facebook groups? Anyone? Couple. No, there's some people.
There are.
Here.
Facebook kind of
We have
underrated.
one.
Yeah, Facebook groups
community,
are
yeah.
definitely underrated. What am I missing?
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a big one.
Gainsight,
LinkedIn groups.
Chorus, Gainsight and Chorus.
The old
Okay.
school Salesforce Experience Cloud. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just curious. We evaluated a couple, but was just curious on what everybody is running on.
Can I just say a non sequitur on Discord?
Yeah.
So you
It's
gotta go.
yours.
So like I'm also like very net new to community stuff. Also like just the first time being in a marketing role actually, but everything that I have an opinion on in community, I learned from like observing Twitch and Discord communities. I think anytime you like can decentralize like innovation and like see what good things are popping up in the wild, like mods in Twitch channels, like talk about like community leaders, like if I don't know how many of you guys are going to do this, but if you want to spare like a few hours to like sit in and get to know a community that's like really strong, I would go observe like how streamers interact with people in chat, how moderators interact with the community in chat, and then how that translates over into Discord as well. Yeah.
I think it's actually incredible how many community people started in gaming. It's like a
Yeah.
super common
Yeah.
way to enter the community space. And I don't even just mean recently. You talk to the oldest community managers you know, most of them started
That's true.
early on in gaming.
see that.
It is a fascinating way to end up as a community manager, but it's very frequent. We see it all the time. Well, that's my last community question. So here's the final ones before we open it up to the crowd. Is there anything you want to leave us with, company related or personal hot take? And then also, where can people find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they connect? All right, I'm going to hand it off to you, EJ.
We're migrating our community to Teams.
Can you? I
Just
can't even
kidding,
imagine.
Just kidding.
My dad asked me that
JK,
question
JK.
recently. So, all right, but where can people find you?
Oh, EJ_beehiiv on X, Edward White on LinkedIn. I go at EJ, but I dumbly verified my ID with Microsoft, so now they won't let me change the name. So it's
Oh.
Edward White on LinkedIn. I'm a sucker for those checklists where they're like, do this, and we'll like checkbox something. I'm like, okay, cool, here's my ID.
Like a gamification onboarding,
Like a
maybe in
gamification
Slack. I don't know.
onboarding,
Maybe
exactly. I'm like the biggest sucker for any of those. But yeah, EJ White, EJ@beehiiv.com. If you have a newsletter that's not on Beehiiv, move it to Beehiiv because it's the best place to run a newsletter between engagement. Well, I can't say we're necessarily like deliverability among everyone's pretty much the same, but deliverability is great. Best customization, best engagement features, best growth features, best earnings features, if that's your thing.
How many people in this room run their newsletter on Beehiiv? Got a good number. All right.
Sweet. Cool. Shout out Brett Deshefsky, Creator Economy Community.
Hey.
I'll start with the easy. So LinkedIn, obviously, you can find me on LinkedIn. This is also where you'll discover where I'm going to.
Ooh, all right.
Tom, Tom, Tom. Avital Knoller, not Knoller, Knoller. And hot takes too, I have two. One, treat your community like a product. So really, you know, get your feedbacks, build it with your customers, listen to them, treat it like a product. Number two, community managers are, I call it Renaissance minds, in the sense that you are more than just an extrovert talking with everyone. You are the salesperson, you're a support engineer, you're product, you're the translator of all these things to your company. And so treat yourself that way and use this superpower that you have to advocate for yourself internally, because you are the only one that wakes up every day thinking about community, period. Boom.
Mic drops.
Good job.
Not really a hot take, but just like takeaway thought or something like that. I would say is like I do think like we all have like very like solid communities, but I would really think intrinsically and like not copy paste what you see in other communities working. I think community is so intrinsic to your product and your goals. It might be sales, it might be brand, it might be customer delight, whatever. So yeah, I think like treat it like a product. I guess it's another way of saying that is like start small, loop, and like iterate, throw things away, iterate, while just keeping balancing the business goals and the human. Like don't take the soul out of it, keeping the human stuff alive. Find me on LinkedIn, Peter Kang. There's like 50 of me out there, so I'm the one that works at Clay with the little rainbow thing.
All right, this is our first huge round of applause for this panel. Because you guys freaking killed it. I think I was watching. I don't think a single person stood up and went and walked away to go get more dumplings, which I'm all going to force you to eat at the end of this. But want to say a huge thank you to all of you for giving us the time. We're going to have time for 2 questions, and I'm going to choose the 2 people that I saw from before that I didn't get to, and then we're going to open it up. We'll be around just kind of closing it out. But thank you again to everyone here. There's a lot of events during New York Tech Week, so thank you again for making it to this one. Hopefully you've also learned something. All right, I know Magic, and then I think Lindsay, did you raise your hand before? Okay, so I saw you both raise your hand. So Magic, we're gonna start with you, and we'll close you out with the last 2 questions.
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Magic. I'm head of community for Q Capital, it's a tech startup. We built an AI professional social network. And so my question for you all was, obviously when you first built your community, was there a time where it was challenging to get people engaged, and what are some tips and tactics that you all use to get people engaged if you ever had that struggle in the beginning?
Okay, so the question is, how do you make sure that in the very beginning of a community, you're building engagement?
I'm sure you have an amazing answer to this. I will say just what we did, my initial wrong instinct when we were planning our community was like, all right, we need to have channels for this and for that and for this other thing, and like 20 channels so that whatever anyone wants to talk about, they have a place to go chat about it. And then we talked to somebody who's done communities before, and they were like, no, literally the opposite. You want, let's do one channel or 2 or max like 3 channels for like, maybe support questions, I don't know, I think we did introductions and just general chat, and just like start there. You want to really condense the critical mass. It's like almost like a fusion reaction. You want to condense where the conversations are happening, and then as those kind of overflow and kind of get unwieldy, that's when you want to add the additional channels. So it's like when people can't really work in general because there's too many different conversations happening concurrently that are unrelated, then split whatever common theme you see off into its own channel, because then you'll know that you'll have engagement in that new channel, and it will make the existing one cleaner and easier to enjoy. But it's kind of a little bit counterintuitive for my mind. That was something that maybe if you're just starting out, is a good thing.
So definitely don't start with 1 million channels. I agree with that. Start small. If you can't start your community with, if you can't do it immediately as the startup started, right? Like if you already have a lot of customers, start with your super users and people that are in love with what you're already doing. So talk with your customer success basically and ask them who should be in there. And be sure that you have also internal stakeholders that could help you out, and give these internal stakeholders tasks like ask questions, create prompts, these kind of things to start creating the engagement. And when you see that there's engagement happening, then you start adding more and more people slowly and listen to them. And that's also when you start opening the channels, right? Like you see, oh, they're asking a lot of questions about this thing. Now we need to open a channel for it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's kind of how you do it. And then add content to it, right? Like add, best practices. Ask your super users to, if you have a relationship with them, to add their best practices. Try to also identify your leaders from day one, because they will also help you with engagement, because eventually people know if someone works for the company or is a customer, right? So identify who could be a leader, and just ask them to be more in the community, or ask more questions, send them a framework of how to send their best practices, these kind of things. That helped me a lot.
Yeah, going 0 to 1 can be super hard. I think finding people, it's about what motivates people, and starting with hand-selected super power users is a really good way to start, and then you'll start to develop a set of personas that you see some people are really motivated by touch points from people at the company. Some people are motivated by like co-marketing and sometimes I'll post stuff from the community and like elevate and highlight people either within the community or on LinkedIn even. Some people are just really motivated by like more transactional stuff like credits, like we work on a credit system, or that can get a little transactional. So like something like early access to beta features, or like monthly Zoom sessions with like a PM, or pretty high cost, but like the CEO if like you're just starting out and you really just want to pour some gas on it. There's like a variety of carrots you can dangle to get the thing started. I think it's really about like nailing what is resonating with them, but is also scalable. If you train them to get used to like you answering their like million questions, that can get unruly. So like balancing that, yeah.
I'd add one last thing. I think maybe this is similar to what happened with Wiz, but for us at least, we framed it not so much as like a resource that we were providing kind of altruistically to them. We framed it as a perk, and for us it was specifically for paid users. I think you were saying it was only your top users who got to use it. I think that's what you said, right?
At the beginning.
Yeah, at the beginning. So we framed it as, we're still pretty young. We're about a year and a half, 2 years in, so we may open this up one day, but we framed it as a perk. And so I think that very simple, subtle, like, shift in a customer or user's mind of it not just being something that's just there that, they can just come and go or use as they please, but actually something that they are earning, and that if they're not taking advantage of it, they're like foregoing some value from the platform, was really helpful for us. I think that was one of the big things. That's still something that every day people are, messaging me. Maybe they didn't see the email or whatever. They're reaching out. They're like, can I get the invite, after a webinar because I didn't see it. I'm like, yeah, go check your email or I can resend it to you. But they want to seek it out because they don't want to like miss out on that value that they're getting from being a smart beehiiv user.
Thank you.
Amazing. All right, last question, Lindsay.
Okay, a lot of pressure. Hi, I'm Lindsay Rothfeld. So once you get that buy-in from internal stakeholders, I feel like sometimes the floodgates open and then everyone wants something from community, whether it's like the product wanting to talk to them or sales wanting to be out in the field with them, or different SMEs wanting to get in there, which could be great. But have you set up like any programs or guardrails around those internal teams and partners interacting within the community, or like those opportunities that you set up with them?
Okay, so just to repeat the question, once you've set up a community, everybody wants a taste. And so how do you make sure that you are bringing in the other departments and still managing, I guess, your own time with it too, because that's part of the problem as well.
And protecting the community
And-
members so they don't
right.
feel like they're being sold to or being taken advantage of.
And protecting the community members themselves.
First of all, what a great problem to have. So yes, I had a bunch of different programs. So first of all, our sales for example, they were allowed to be spectators, but not any more than that. They could like things, but never respond. So sales were not allowed to respond, period. Then, yeah. Never. Then we had product channels. So in the product channels, our product managers were supposed to respond. They didn't always have the time. But then we had a program that I called community service. And I know some people loved it and some people hated it. They were like, but the idea was that when a solution engineer or support engineer finishes their technical onboarding, before we let them work with customers, they are the ones that are responding within the community instead of having people who, instead of having people, like a specific person just responding to everything. And so for like around 3 months, I would have these solution engineers and support engineers responding. And then as they finished their community service, they could answer if they want because they know that they are now qualified and they know how to because they went through training. And some of them would stay because they loved it, and some kind of left. And then the third piece was with customer success. With them, they were allowed to answer only if I reached out to them, telling them that their specific customer is not getting the response I think they should, or they're not, they need a little bit more of love and attention. And so that was kind of how we built it. But it was very clear for internal stakeholders that they can only respond or do anything if I tell them. But yeah, it's hard because you need to really build this trust with them, and they need to believe that you know what's best for the community and for their customers. And you always have to reiterate that there are other customers in there. And if you answer something that is specifically right for your customer, you might be doing something really wrong because maybe another customer is not getting the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer for your situation. Just because Clay runs so chaotically, to be honest, and we're all got our hands in everything. And for example, we have our Slack culture. Everyone can generate a channel in our company Slack, and everyone can be in every channel. And we have this rule that you don't DM people unless it's a personal one-on-one thing. So yeah, I think we just haven't run into too many scenarios where I feel the need to protect the community per se. I think the sales side, most people are busy with their stuff. And then the rest of the work kind of gets disseminated across our marketing team. I guess the few times where there is some cross-functional collaboration, we have a US-based internal really overqualified support team that's all over the support side. And then the other times that they need to get involved, we tap our tiered programs that we already have really good relationships with. So I think that creates a lot of buffer for us to we have that built-in trust, we have that built-in rapport, and if sales needs something, events guy needs something, CEO wants to talk to somebody, yeah, that is already baked in. But the cost of that is we have dedicated people giving them more value so that the expected value that they're giving matches kind of the value that we've been giving as well. Yeah.
I don't have an answer. We have the opposite situation where our team is protected from the community, where it's frowned upon to take those community things and push them onto people. Not because they don't want to answer, plenty of people will go into the community and they'll engage on their own. And if there's an opportunity where I think somebody specifically, or our community manager thinks somebody specifically can add value, they will take the link, share a copy link and take it into our own company Slack and say, hey, this user has a question, can you answer it? But from the beginning, it was very much hey, this, we don't want this to be a huge distraction for every employee in the company, where every employee can see every message from the community and it's just a free-for-all. It's kind of the opposite. We're just we wanted to kind of firewall that so that community users are helping community users. We're in there as just buffers to keep things on the rails, keep things moving along, answer questions if users aren't getting answers. But our hope and our goal is for it to be kind of a self-sustaining, self-perpetuating living organism of our best customers and our most engaged users, where our intervention is very minimal. Where I will say we do something different, similar to what you said with all those programs. We have a ton of different special projects where for those we actually manage a lot of those special projects within that community in private channels. So we have a local newsletter accelerator for people running local newsletters. That was application only. They have their own private channel. Our partner program, just an affiliate program, they have a private channel. Our media collective, which is media people, journalists who are going independent, have their own private channel that nobody can join. And that's just a functional way for us to manage those programs, but it's not really connected to the community program.
Let's do one massive round of applause again. Thank you all.